Right now, as you sit in your car or as you think back to the last time you drove it, something is happening inside your transmission that you were never supposed to find out about. Every single time your car shifts gears in a way that feels wrong, every time it hesitates, every time it clunks or jerks or seems to stumble between second and third gear, your transmission's internal computer is writing that mistake into its permanent memory. It is learning the wrong lessons. It is memorizing your worst driving moments, your cold morning starts, your frustrated accelerations in traffic, and it is storing all of that corrupted data as if it were the law. And here is the part that should make your blood run hot. The fix costs nothing. It takes 60 seconds. It requires zero tools, zero fluids, zero appointments, and $0. But the dealership sitting 5 miles from your house is counting on the fact that you will never, ever find out how to do it yourself. They are banking on your ignorance, not metaphorically, literally, financially. The average transmission rebuild at a franchise dealership in the United States today costs between $3,500 and $5,000. A replacement unit can push past $7,000, and in a staggering number of those cases, the transmission itself is perfectly fine. The mechanical components, the clutch packs, the planetary gears, the valve body, they are all intact and functional. What is broken is the software layer sitting on top of all that hardware. It is a digital ghost that is making a healthy machine behave like a dying one. And when you walk through that service bay door describing harsh shifts and delayed engagement, the technician behind the counter does not reach for a laptop to reset a memory file. He reaches for a repair order form and starts writing down parts you do not need. This video is going to destroy that business model. So let us go back to the beginning, because to understand why this reset works, you need to understand what adaptive transmission memory actually is, where it came from, and why it was designed the way it was in the first place. The story begins in the late 1970s and early 1980s, inside the quiet, obsessively precise engineering laboratories of Japanese automakers. Toyota, Nissan, and Honda were in a fierce competition not just for market share, but for reliability reputation. They were building cars for export to America, a country with a wildly diverse range of driving environments, altitudes, temperatures, and driving behaviors. An engineer in a climate-controlled lab in Aichi Prefecture could not possibly tune a single fixed shift schedule that would feel perfectly smooth, whether the car was being driven gently through the hills of Vermont or aggressively through the heat of Phoenix in August. The physics simply did not allow for one rigid solution to serve all of those scenarios simultaneously. So they invented something elegant. They gave the transmission a brain. A small dedicated microprocessor began monitoring inputs from dozens of sensors: throttle position, vehicle speed, engine load, coolant temperature, brake pressure, and even the rate of change in your accelerator pedal position. From all of this incoming data, the transmission control unit began building a unique profile for that specific car in that specific climate, driven by that specific driver. Engineers call this adaptive shift logic. It worked on the same principle as the human nervous system building muscle memory. The more you performed a specific action, the more the system refined its response to that action. Over time, the transmission would shift with an almost supernatural smoothness because it had learned exactly what you needed before you fully asked for it. Think of it this way. Imagine you're training a professional chef to cook your favorite meal. On the first night, they follow the recipe precisely, and it's good. By the 6th month of cooking for you every evening, they know before you even sit down whether you want more salt tonight, whether you're in the mood for a slower simmer or a faster sear. They have adapted to you specifically. That is what adaptive transmission memory was designed to do. It was a breathtaking piece of engineering philosophy, and it worked beautifully, for a while. Here's where the science gets uncomfortable. The adaptive memory system writes its learned data to a region of the transmission control unit's memory that is designed to be rewritable. Every drive cycle adds new data points. Every unusual event, a hard stop, a missed shift, an unusually cold start, gets recorded and weighted. The system is supposed to have a self-correcting algorithm, a way of recognizing when a new data point is an anomaly versus a new pattern. But this algorithm has a fundamental vulnerability. It does not distinguish between genuine learning and accumulated error. Over time, particularly in vehicles that experience a lot of stop-and-go traffic, frequent short trips where the engine never fully reaches operating temperature, or erratic driving patterns, the memory file begins to fill with contradictory and corrupted data points. The system gets confused. It tries to satisfy conflicting learned parameters simultaneously, and the result is what drivers experience as harsh, unpredictable, hesitant, or clunky shifting behavior. The technical term for this state is adaptive memory degradation, and here is the critical fact. It's not mechanical wear. The gears are fine. The solenoids are fine. The fluid, assuming it has been changed at reasonable intervals, is fine. The system simply has too much dirty data trying to run a clean operation. It's the software equivalent of a drawer that has been stuffed with so many random papers that it can no longer close properly. The solution is not to buy a new drawer, the solution is to empty it out and start fresh. Now, we arrive at the part of the story that should genuinely make you furious. Because what I just described, this software solution, this memory reset, this drawer clearing procedure, it was documented internally by every major automaker that implemented adaptive transmission learning. Every single one of them had, and still has, a dealer-level reset procedure. Some of them require a scan tool, but a remarkable number of vehicles, particularly those built between 1995 and 2018 by Toyota, Honda, Nissan, Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler, have a procedure that requires nothing but the ignition key and the accelerator pedal. It's a sequence, a simple, specific, mechanical sequence of inputs that tells the transmission control unit to wipe its adaptive memory file and return to factory default shift parameters. This procedure was documented in internal technical service bulletins. It was known to every factory-trained technician from the moment these vehicles left the assembly line. And it was deliberately, systematically, and completely excluded from every owner's manual ever printed for public distribution. Not by accident, not by oversight, by decision. A decision made in boardrooms where the conversation was explicitly about profit margins on service department revenue. Because the service department at a franchise dealership is not a convenience for the customer. It is the primary profit engine of the entire operation. New car sales, after all the discounts and incentives and dealer holdback games, are frequently a break-even proposition, or close to it. The real money, the margin that keeps the lights on and the bonuses flowing, comes from service, and nothing feeds that machine like a panicked customer sitting across a service desk being told their transmission is failing. A transmission rebuild is the holy grail of service department revenue. It's a job that is difficult to price shop because most people don't have the vocabulary to challenge the diagnosis. It's labor-intensive, which means the hourly rate compounds beautifully. And it carries a mystique of complexity that makes the average driver feel completely helpless. Take a vehicle whose adaptive memory has degraded to the point of producing genuinely alarming shift behavior. Bring it to a dealership and watch what happens. A standard diagnostic scan will not flag the adaptive memory file as corrupted because the memory is functioning exactly as designed. It's just full of bad data. The scan tool reads healthy system parameters. And so the technician, either through genuine misdiagnosis or something more deliberate, moves to the next step: physical inspection and component testing. Hours of build diagnostic time later, the verdict comes back: worn clutch packs, degraded solenoid performance, internal valve body wear. The recommendation: rebuild or replace. And you, sitting in a waiting room drinking bad coffee, have no reason to doubt any of it. This is exactly where the evidence becomes impossible to ignore. In 2009, a fleet management company operating a pool of over 400 Toyota Camrys and Honda Accords for corporate travel in the northeastern United States began documenting a pattern. Vehicles between 60 and 90,000 miles were being flagged for transmission concerns at a rate that was economically unsustainable. A junior fleet engineer working with a technical service bulletin database that the company had licensed for internal use identified the adaptive memory reset procedure for both vehicle platforms. Rather than authorizing the standard dealership repair path, he implemented the reset across the entire flagged pool of vehicles as a controlled test. The results were filed internally and later referenced in an automotive engineering trade publication. 91% of the vehicles exhibiting harsh or erratic shifting behavior returned to factory smooth operation within 1 to 3 drive cycles following the reset. Total cost for the intervention across all vehicles: $0. The alternative, had the standard repair path been followed, was projected at over $200,000 in service expenditure. That is not a theory. That is a documented, real-world, large-scale demonstration of exactly what I'm telling you. The procedure works. The mechanics are healthy. The software is the culprit, and the industry knew this the entire time. So here's what you're going to do today. And I want you to follow this with precision, because the sequence matters. The order of operations matters. Doing this incorrectly will not harm anything, but it will also not trigger the reset, and you will wonder why nothing changed. This procedure applies broadly to a large number of vehicles, particularly Toyotas and Hondas from the mid-1990s through roughly 2018, and a significant number of domestic vehicles from General Motors and Ford in the same era. If your vehicle is in this range and you are experiencing hesitant, harsh, or erratic transmission shifts, do this now. First, make sure your vehicle is parked on a level surface and the engine is completely cold. This means you have not driven it for at least 6 hours. Cold start conditions are important because the transmission control unit uses cold start behavior as a